North Korea's most trusted killer got out. He wasn't a man who protected people. He was a man who made people disappear. January 2024. The Tumen River, 9 degrees below zero, and dropping. A man who stood at the top of North Korea's guard command, close enough to Kim Jong-un and his wife to hear them breathe. That night, he crossed the border. He'd spent his life guarding. When he reached South Korea's National Intelligence Service, he laid something on the table. Not a classified file, not a weapon. A wooden whistle, small enough to fit in his palm, worn smooth by years. He started to hand it to the officer. Then he saw the old man standing in the doorway, and he went down, right there on the floor, sobbing like something wounded. 17 years guarding, the highest power in the north. One old man brought him to his knees. Who was he? And why did a battered wooden whistle break a man like that? This is a sinner's confession. One man kept this hidden his entire life. Just staying with it to the end gives this story its meaning. A subscribe and a like keep stories like this one alive. They called me the Shield. That was a lie. I didn't block anything. I erased. A man who annoyed someone above him. A man who knew too much. A man whose loyalty came into question. They'd passed by my desk, and a few days later, they were gone from the world. Nothing in the paperwork. Nothing in anyone's memory. To reach that rank, I fed my conscience into the machine, piece by piece. First, my hands shook. Then I stopped sleeping. Then I stopped feeling anything at all. Losing your feelings. That's the only way to survive in that room. But once, one single time, I disobeyed an order. There was one person I couldn't erase. And that one crack carried me to this river 17 years later.
Call me Jong, 45 years old that winter, a sinner who erased more people than I can count, and tried at the very end to save one child. Here it is, the first time I've said any of it out loud. I first held a rifle at 19, a mountain village in Hamgyong province, in the far north of the country. The rations had stopped years before. In winter, the boy next door froze to death without a sound. By spring, a new family's name hung on that door. My mother held me and wept. Our family won't go hungry now, she said. My son is a Pyongyang man. She boiled 2 potatoes for me that day. I still taste them. I didn't learn until I reached Pyongyang that they were the last 2 potatoes in the house. Pyongyang was another world. Can you picture it? Same country. On one side, people froze in the street over a bowl of corn porridge. One wall over, foreign liquor poured under chandeliers, ice in glass tumblers, fruit in colors I'd never seen. One table held more food than my village got in a year. I became a man who guarded the inside of that wall, and I learned to forget everyone I'd left outside it. There was one man back then who taught me letters, and taught me about people. Instructor Kang from the Guard Command Training School. The other instructors broke us with beatings. He called me in at night and read to me. Jong, the man holding the rifle, is the one who has to understand people. You can pull a trigger anytime you want. You can never pull it back. He was the only adult who used my name. Everyone else called me a number. He said Jong-hyuk, an old wooden whistle always, hung around his neck. For finding kids lost in the mountains, he told me, smiling. Hear this, he said, and you can find your way home from anywhere. At 25, I was picked for the Close Protection Bureau, 10 feet from the supreme dignity, the title they use for the leader. The moment I stepped inside that circle, I lost my name. Not Jong-hyuk anymore. A shadow. No expression. No feelings. Not even my own thoughts. Couldn't smile. Couldn't frown. Just be a wall. Slowly, very slowly, I became something other than a person. Then at 28, my first erasure order came down, and the name on it was Instructor Kang. I read it again. And again. Wrong man, maybe. Same name, different person. A clerical error. It wasn't. I found out later. He'd been passing banned books around the school. He'd been telling students to think for themselves. That was enough to make a man disappear. Teaching people how to think was the worst crime there was. The order was simple. Take him into the mountains. Handle it quietly. Come back. I put him in the truck. My knuckles went white on the wheel. He didn't blame me. From the back seat, He said it quietly. Jong-hyuk, you have to live for this to end. Erasing me won't clean your hands. You're not shooting me. You're shooting the last person left inside you. Up in the mountains, I couldn't pull the trigger. That hand had taught me to write at 19. That voice had said my name in the dark. I lowered the rifle and pushed him toward the border. Run! Go now! Then I reported it done. The first and last false report of my life. Before he went, he lifted the whistle off his neck and pressed it into my hand. If you ever really lose your way, blow it. Wherever I am, I'll come find you. That night, gunfire from the border. Several rounds. I sat down in the dirt where I stood. He never made it across. I was certain. He died on the road I pushed him down. For 17 years, that whistle was the proof of what I'd done. I never showed it to a soul. Inside my uniform, in the pocket over my heart. Funny thing, a man who erased people couldn't sleep for the rest of his life. Over the one he didn't. Every night, those shots again. Years passed. I rose to the top of the ranks. I married Sun-hee, and we had our daughter Yun-biul. Hands like mine. Had never held anything that small or that warm. She was a frail child. Asthma. When an attack came, she'd fight for air all night, blue in the face. Watching that little chest rise and fall, I became something new, a man afraid of losing something. Then a bad wind started blowing through the guard command. Purges. Aimed at our own protection unit. The supreme dignity fears his own guards more than anyone. The closest blade can always turn. A man you worked beside yesterday wouldn't be there today, and nobody said his name. You didn't ask. You didn't wonder. One day my superior called me in and slid a paper across the desk. That Kang you handled 17 years back. We never confirmed the body. Intelligence says an old man in the South looks a lot like him. Go verify it yourself. My heart stopped. Instructor Kang was alive. The gunfire that night hadn't been him. He'd made it, and he was living in South Korea. The death I'd carried for 17 years was never a death at all. The relief lasted about a second. Then it landed. This was a test. They knew about my false report. My superior's eyes said so. Send me to that old man to prove my loyalty, or use my failure to erase me too. Either way, the ending was already written, and I know how it goes. When a man like me disappears, it doesn't stop with him. That night I went home and stood over Yun-biul asleep. If they took me, guilt by association would take her too. Whole families punished for one man's crime. Sun-hee, impure, a 3-year-old labeled a traitor's family, hauled off to a camp in the mountains. I'd watched it happen with my own eyes. So I decided, if we run, it's now. I can't kill that man twice. This time I go to him. I woke Sun-hee, and that night I told her everything I'd hidden from her for 17 years. What I'd done for a living. Instructor Kang. The whistle. She cried for a long time. I couldn't lift my head. I was sure she was looking at a monster. Then she took my hand. All this time, how heavy that must have been. That one sentence took me apart. For the first time since I was 19, I cried out loud in front of another human being. We have to leave, I said. Stay here and neither of you survives. And this time I have to find him. If he's alive at the end of the road, I pushed him down. I have to go and tell him I'm sorry. Sun-hee picked up Yun-biul. She smoothed the sleeping child's forehead for a long while. Then she nodded. That night we made a decision. We could never take back. Crossing meant getting past the guard posts. I went to Taesong, my academy classmate, now a company commander on the Tumen River Border Guard. Back when we were starving cadets, he split his corn rations with me. I put everything on the table and asked. He said nothing for a long time. Smoked a cigarette down to the filter. Then, Jong-hyuk, I know what you've been doing. I know there's blood on your hands, but I've never seen your eyes like this. Those are a person's eyes. You've been walking around dead, and now look at you. Go. Shift change at the post 90 seconds. I'll turn my back. I told him to come with us. He shook his head. Somebody has to stay and hold the door open, he said. Otherwise, how does the next man get out? He knew exactly what would happen to him. He knew guilt by association was waiting. He smiled anyway. The morning we left, my mother caught my arm. She already knew everything. I'm old. Take me and all of you die. I'll stay. Just get Yun-biul all out. Get that little one to safety. I dropped to my knees. Mother, come with us, please. She pulled my hands off her. The woman who wept sending me. To Pyongyang at 19 this time. I was the one leaving her behind. She pressed a handful of dried corn into Yunbile's hand. "Eat if you get hungry on the way, sweet girl." Then she shoved me toward the door. "Go, don't look back." That was the last time. I never did look back. January 2024. That night, 9 degrees below zero. The two men was frozen solid. Every breath felt like ice in my lungs. We hid in the dead reeds along the bank and waited for it. Then we crawled toward the post. 90 seconds the window Taesong promised. I'd made Yunbile promise over and over. Not a sound. "No matter what happens," she nodded. The fear in those small eyes has never left me. Then a patrol appeared. Not on the schedule. A flashlight swept the bank. I covered Unbile's mouth, pulled Sunhee down, and pressed us, flat into the reeds. I stopped breathing. My heartbeat was loud enough for them to hear. Boots on ice coming closer. They stopped a few feet from my face. I gripped the pistol inside my coat. If they found us, I had to hold them long enough for my wife and daughter to run, sweat on my fingertips. Then the footsteps moved on. A cigarette ember drifted away into the dark. The 90 seconds were burning down. Now, we stepped onto the ice. Mid-river it groaned under our boots. Every step was the line between living and dying. Then Yunbile started coughing. The asthma. That cold had closed her lungs. The sound carried across the frozen river. The searchlight on the tower swung toward us. Sunny grabbed her and pushed into my chest. Yunbile couldn't breathe. She was turning blue. Her small hand knotted in my collar. The light came for us. If I could have traded my life to stop that cough, I would have handed it over right there. And in that second, I thought of the whistle in my coat. I could hear his voice. "If you lose your way, blow it." A shot. They'd found us. "Run." I shoved Sunhee and Yunbile ahead of me. "Get down!" Rounds hit the ice. Fragments cut my face. Ice and spray went up all around us. Yunbile slipped and went down. I snatched her up and threw her over my shoulder. I locked my jaw and did not let go of Sun Hui's hand. Behind us, Taesong's voice. He was firing flares. Over the far side of the post, the night sky burned red as daylight, pulling their eyes away. Not here, over there. For me, to the end. The gunfire moved toward him. I couldn't look back. Look back and I'd stop. So I ran, my daughter on my shoulder, my wife's hand in mine, across the ice, into the dark on the other side. My lungs were tearing. My legs had gone numb. I ran anyway. The far bank. We went down in the reeds, soaked through, frozen. And I couldn't feel the cold at all. My hands shook when I took Yunbile's face in them. She was breathing. Thin, but breathing. She looked up at me and gave me the smallest smile. Sunhee held her and cried without making a sound. I looked up. More stars than I could stand. The same stars I'd seen in the north, and somehow not the same at all. I looked back. Nothing on the ice we'd crossed. No Taesong, no flares. That red sky was black again. I prayed he made it. I know better. We lived. 17 years of erasing people. And I'd finally saved 3. My own family. It took me a lifetime to say that sentence out loud. A few months later, I stood on South Korean ground. Things you don't even think about. Knocked me flat day after day. First streets lit up like noon, in the middle of the night. In Pyongyang, the whole city went black, as ink when the sun went down. Blackouts were routine. Even the Supreme Dignity's residents worried about backup power. Here, at 3 in the morning, the convenience store lights are on, and the food is stacked to the ceiling. I stood outside one for a long time. Nobody guards any of it. Nobody takes it. I couldn't make that make sense. Second the faucet. Touch it and hot water comes pouring out. In the north, we lined up at the river, before dawn for 1 bucket. In winter, people slipped on that ice, hauling water and died. The day Yunbile put her hands under the warm water and said, "Daddy, the water's laughing," I sat down on the kitchen floor and cried again. Something that small and warm. I couldn't give it to her. I put her through all of it instead. Third, the hospital. When the asthma put Yunbile down again, I had no money and no rank. A stranger in a strange country. In the north, without my position, that girl simply dies. Here they saved my daughter. National health insurance. Nobody asked who I was. The doctor didn't bow to me, and I didn't bow to anyone either. In the north, I had to steal medicine, meant for the Supreme Dignity, to keep her breathing. Here they just saved her, like it was nothing remarkable. That was the day I understood what I'd spent 17 years protecting with my life, and what I should have been protecting all along. The day the investigation started, I reached for the old wooden whistle to set it on the table. 17 years of testimony against me, the last trace of a man. I'd pushed out a door and believed I'd killed. I was going to tell them what it meant, and take whatever punishment the names I erased had earned me. Then the door opened. An old man came in slowly, leaning on a cane. White hair, bent back. The second I saw his face, my breath stopped. Instructor Kang, alive. That gunfire 17 years ago was never him. He crossed the river that night. He'd settled in this country long ago and grown old here, quietly. The NIS had been verifying who I was, found the old connection, and brought him in. He looked at me for a long moment. Then unsteady, Jong, you're alive. I went down on that floor. I cried out loud, the same as the mountain boy of 19. Teacher, I thought I killed you. 17 years. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The words wouldn't come. I just kept repeating those two. I held the whistle out to him, with shaking hands. I kept this for 17 years. You told me to blow it if I lost my way. I blew it too late. He wouldn't take it. He closed both his hands around mine, whistle and all. No, you blew it. And that's why I've been here waiting for you. And Jong Hyuk, I hear that whistle saved your daughter. Then it's finished. That's enough. Those hands save people now. That's why I collapsed the moment I walked into that building. The man I believed I'd erased was alive, and he forgave me. 17 years of weight dissolved. In one sentence. That was when I became a person again.
I know something now. A hand that saves one person is stronger than any power that erases them. I'll spend the rest of my life remembering the names I erased, not forgetting that's the job of the ones who survive. And Taesong, who bought us those minutes on the ice. And my mother, who stayed behind so we could go. I pray every day for the day I see them again. When it comes, I'll be the one who turns his back to guard them. A man who erased people used those same hands, in the end, to save them. There is something about my country you may not know. When that border went up in 1953, roughly 10 million Koreans were cut off from their own families. Not soldiers, farmers, mothers, children who were sent ahead on a road and told to wait. Most of them died, still waiting. The ones left are in their 80s and 90s now. And every year, the list gets shorter. In 73 years, only a few thousand have ever been allowed to sit across a table from the family they lost for 2 or 3 days, under supervision, before the buses took them back. That is not a history lesson over there. That is a grandmother this afternoon in a room with a photograph. That river is still there. So are the people on the other side of it. As long as we don't forget them, their stories find their way across. Maybe that's where it starts. The day those two countries become one again. With not forgetting. Thank you for staying with this all the way to the end.